Hi, your friendly neighborhood Izzo here. For this video, I'm going to discuss some of the more advanced features of Microsoft Teams. First, we'll start with mentions. Microsoft Mentions is basically the way to notify somebody that, hey, you need them to look at this. You can do a mention to a specific person, or you can do a mention to an entire channel. The way you do mentions is an @ sign, and you can start to type names. Since I only have one name within my channel and team right now, that's all I can call. But if they have permissions, you should be able to call them or mention them. This is also something to keep in mind for private channels, as permissions may differ from the entire team. Additionally, I can go in and mention an entire channel. And if I do this, everybody that has access to that channel will get the mention. So this can be super useful if you're needing to task an entire channel, or you need them to read something or do something. You can basically mention them and they'll instantly get a notification that, hey, they need to look at this, and it'll pop up in their activity feed as well. So they'll have a 1, 2, 3 depending on how many mentions or notifications they've had. Now we'll start talking about some of the more applications that Microsoft Teams has. For starters, you can tie in a document library. If you are familiar, this does this automatically with the files, but you can create additional libraries if you have separation you need to have in your channel or team. You can start tying in files such as Excel, OneNote, PowerPoint, or Word. In order to do this, you do already have to have the files loaded. As you can see, I've already done this, but they need to be loaded in one of the document libraries you have available on that channel. So for example, if I wanted to load up an Excel file, I could select my book that I've loaded to the 3D1 General, click Save, and now the file will show up here. I can rename it from here. I can change its settings to change it to a different file, or I can work with the team to start editing this file. This could be useful for timelines or financial spreadsheets or whatever the purpose may be. Our teams can collaborate and I can actually see who's editing it. It'll pop up with a little blue star and say the abbreviations of who edited the line. You do not have to worry about saving. Everything auto saves, and instead you can just close it or go to the next thing once you're done. The same thing with Word. I can tie in this file and do the same exact features that Excel has, and the same thing with PowerPoint and those other Microsoft Office applications. Now we'll talk about the websites. Through a website, you can actually make Microsoft Teams serve as a sandbox to throw you to the website. I've noticed this doesn't work too well with a lot of the Air Force websites. However, if you have a specific website for like enrolling in a class or something like that, you could throw it in here. For example, I'll use the Google website and click Save, and it'll basically serve as a sandbox for browsing Google. So I could do everything I need to do from this Teams view. I can go away and it'll stay. Authentication will stay. Lasts about 30 minutes before you need to re-authenticate if it is a site you need to authenticate into. One of the last features we have is the SharePoint feature. So to better explain this, we have to go on the back end. This is primarily useful for lists, as you can see here, but as you can also see, we don't have a list, and you cannot create a list from this. So first, we need to go into the back end. As I mentioned in one of my other videos, Teams serves as a SharePoint interface. So I can go in here and click Open in SharePoint, and it'll actually open the page that Teams is operating on. So now you can see that file I have loaded in my Files directory on Teams. Same thing here. And same thing here. You'll also see some of the additional things by clicking on Site Contacts, and you may find some things that look familiar in your teams, especially if you have more document libraries and such. So in order to add a new list, I click New List. I come up and name it. We'll name it Test and create. This makes a generic list. If you're not familiar with lists are kind of like an Excel spreadsheet, just on the SharePoint interface. You can tie in SharePoint to do some additional features with it, or you can just export the sheet to Excel. It's basically a web interface for kind of Excel. But if I want to tie that back into here, I should now be able to see it if I click here and onto lists. See, now I can see my test list, save. And now I can start modifying this if I needed to. And then I can exit the quick edit, and voila. So just another tool that's available to you. I hope you find some of these advanced features useful, and have a good night.